Gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you here. I'm sure I speak for every member of the council when I express my admiration for the passion that you have devoted to this issue, for the work that went into conceiving and presenting the vision that you've articulated tonight, and also our admiration for the level of community service that each of you in different ways has provided the community of New Rochelle. With that said, I'm happy to open the floor to members of council for questions or comments. Okay, well, I'll lead things off. Perhaps I'll also conclude things. I'm not sure. Did you want to jump in?
I just want to know if we can get a copy of that report,
yes.
The engineer's report.
Yes, absolutely.
We are right now in the midst of a memorandum of understanding with Forest City Residential that runs through the end of this year. We do expect Forest City to return to us sometime this fall with a revised concept for the Echo Bay waterfront. We don't know yet whether that will encompass the Armory in some fashion or not, but that's of course possible. This session occurred because a request was made to release us from the specific terms of the MOU that would ordinarily prohibit us from engaging in discussion with other potential developers. So we're glad to have had the chance to have this sort of exchange, but if our comments and discussion is a little bit constrained now, you'll understand it's because we have another process that's working simultaneously. I wanted to suggest, and you indicated that you were speaking on behalf of Monroe College. Just to be clear, do you mean that Monroe has committed to this concept or that they are interested in exploring this concept?
Well, at this particular part of the scheduling for whether or not Forest City is going to continue with the city or not, it's very difficult to get commitments from anybody.
Understood.
But they are more than seriously interested.
Okay.
And the question you ask actually begs my question to the council. What we're actually asking for is an opportunity to come back at a later date with a comprehensive plan, detailed, with our partner Monroe, that shows the feasibility and the cost breakdowns and the contractual arrangements that we would propose. And if we can get an expedited, meeting, meaning that maybe with your dialogue with Forest City, we can find out if they're interested in our 3.5 acres or if they're going to try to design something around us. We also want to acknowledge, and I want to thank personally Abe Napperstack for the quick decision to allow us to come in with the city. We've had meetings with him. So we're actually just looking for the opportunity to come back to you, hopefully in early fall if possible, so we don't waste another year where the building, because it is in disrepair with the roof already leaking, that it doesn't have to go through another winter without heat and being further deteriorated, which would mean that much more money to put it back together.
Well, perhaps if Forest City is agreeable, it would make sense for you and Monroe and Forest City to all speak together. Obviously, one of the questions that the city will have to ask is not only whether this concept is achievable and self-sustaining on its own terms, but whether it can be integrated into our overall goals for the Echo Bay waterfront, which call for additional public access and economic activation and so forth. And that's the level of analysis that Forest City is engaged in. And so to have your efforts merged with theirs so that we could all get a better sense of how this might fit into the city's larger vision for the shoreline might make a great deal of sense. Would you be amenable to an arrangement of that kind?
We'd be more than happy, Mr. Mayor, to do that. And if you could be the facilitator to allow that to happen sooner than later, we're ready to talk with them.
Mr. City Manager, I see you eager to say something.
I just want the Corporation Council to confirm that any future presentation discussion has to be in consultation with Forest City unless there is an explicit release from what we're obligated under the MOU. I just want to make sure everybody understands that until the end of December, unless they are engaged with you, they are the lead, I don't want to say lead agency, but the lead. They have exclusivity on the site.
Well, that's why the mayor's comments are very appropriate. If he could arrange it and act as a facilitator to allow us to get together to have a preliminary discussion, maybe we can get some kind of an accord that we can go ahead and start some serious planning. So we appreciate that.
My point is only that it has to be in consultation with them.
No?
Just-
Good. Well
We're
taken,
happy to.
Chuck.
And,
We
Mr.
didn't mean
Ver-
to exclude you from our comments in the beginning, too.
That's okay.
We welcome the mayor and everybody.
That's fine.
Mr. Verni, in addition to the engineering analysis requested by Councilmember Fertel, the uses and sources that you ticked off, does that exist as a written document that can be circulated to the council?
No, because it's in
It doesn't.
preliminary stages, so we haven't had any formal discussions with Monroe about, what everyone's willing to put in. So there's preliminary discussions about who would put in X amount of capital and what the lease terms would be.
But presumably a more complete and substantive business plan would be among the things
Sure.
that would emerge from additional conversations. And you'd be able to determine at that point whether it is in fact feasible or not feasible?
Right.
Okay. Forest City will come back to us in the fall and make a presentation, presumably based on how they think they can best achieve various goals at the waterfront. That may include the Armory, it may not. The discussions that this organization and this group has with Forest City may or may not bear fruit. And then it'll be up to every council member to make a judgment by the end of the year as to whether we want to continue our relationship with Forest City. Now, every council member on an individual basis can decide to make preservation of the Armory a litmus test or not. There are any number of tests that we might apply to what Forest City comes back to us with. But I don't think we're signaling as a body that such an agreement be a condition. We're simply saying we'd like the conversation to occur so that we can all have a better understanding of what is and what is not feasible. It seems to me that's the same request that you are making. You've outlined a concept, and you would acknowledge that it requires additional analysis to determine whether it's feasible.
There's
Case
a
as
line
well.
that is drawn where we have to decide when that standard is reached. Remember, the MOU was based on an RFP that the city put out with a development plan. If that is dramatically, correct me if I'm wrong, if that is dramatically divergent from what the city originally put out through that RFP, there may be a legal obligation to undergo another RFP rather than just extend an MOU. Am I
Right.
accurate in that?
But also, if their revised proposal is very different from the proposal that was the subject of the MOU, we may have to, they may be looking for an amendment to the MOU as well.
I think that's just important for parties to know
Either one is possible, it depends on how
We'd have to
different
look
it
at
is.
how
what
substantive
the
the
changes
changes are.
are. Okay, thank you.
Because I don't remember exactly, but the RFP allows a phasing also of the development, doesn't it? So while you're phasing in most developments, things change quite often, and as long as something is built that even slightly resembles what was originally planned, would allow them to go forward under the same RFP, wouldn't it?
Right, there's a more flexibility in the RFP.
Right. Okay.
Other questions or comments at this time?
I just would like to comment that our next phase of our study would be quite expensive. And we would hope that if we can meet with Forest City, and it's clearly understood that if upon that concluded meeting that they determine after a period of time that they're not interested in that site, we would proceed, spend the money, come back to the council, and if we're consistent with the principles and the determinants that you established about access to the waterfront and so on, we would like to be able to expedite so we can get into construction or reconstruction before the winter so the building doesn't suffer any further deterioration. And this is all contingent upon Forest City agreeing with what we want to do, and if the city retains ownership as a not-for-profit, which the Legion is.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your presence here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.